Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Well, we can carry on discussing this now because with me is Admiral Lord West, the former First Sea Lord and Security Minister, John Woodcock, the Labour MP for Barrow-in-Furness, where Trident submarines are built, Caroline Lucas, Green Party MP and Vice President for the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament, and Brendan O'Hara, SNP's defence spokesman. Good evening to you all. First of all, John Woodcock, what do you make of what Emily Thornby's just said?
Well, the one thing which I think is really clear that Labour members looking at this understand that this is not simply the Labour Party waving through a decision as if it's had no time to think about it. It was the Labour government in 2007 that started this programme. We then looked at this extensively in opposition under Ed Miliband, and Ed at the time was sceptical, and it took him some time to actually recommit to the policy of renewal in a submarine ballistic missile system. There was an exhaustive process going through the Labour Party's National Policy Forum.
So it's been done and done.
It has, and we stood on a manifesto commitment to do this, and that was significant. That policy was reaffirmed at the last Labour Party conference, and we're going to have a vote. Let's hope, according to the industrial timetable, as soon as possible. I think certainly this year, and myself and I think many of my parliamentary colleagues are clear that we will be supporting the government.
Brendan O'Hara, the SNP's position is one that you eschew all nuclear weapons, you don't want to have Trident in Scotland, and yet you'd be happy and content to be under NATO's umbrella if indeed an attack came. Isn't that a preposterous position?
No, not at all. I think if you look at countries like Norway, countries like Canada, who are members of NATO, full members of NATO, and they will not allow nuclear weapons on their soil. What we have said quite clearly is that post-independence we will take on our treaty responsibilities as any other country would do. We would then be a member of NATO, and we would want to be a member of NATO, but under strict conditions that they accept. We would not have nuclear weapons on our soil.
But Norway has never had nuclear weapons. It's quite different to be a member of NATO and actually get rid of it. We'd be the first country in the world to get rid of nuclear weapons.
And I think that would send a very powerful signal to the rest of the world that one does not need nuclear weapons. I think Scotland could use its influence for extreme good by showing that we could get rid of our nuclear weapons.
Lord West, you were actually...
Can I just say there is absolutely no contradiction between wishing to remain a member of NATO and not allowing nuclear weapons on your soil.
Brendan, you say that nuclear weapons are morally indefensible. Yeah. It is indefensible to have them. They are repugnant. But yet they're repugnant, and yet you want to snuggle in behind America with its nuclear protection.
It's not a case of snuggling in
NATO's
anybody.
Nuclear umbrella. It is a nuclear alliance. You think they are morally repugnant, but you want someone else to protect you. In what way is that morally defensible?
Norway are the country who are leading and pressing for non-proliferation and for working towards
as have the
nuclear
UK been,
disarmament.
if you've been paying attention over the last 15 years.
Norway are leading the case for non-proliferation.
Yeah.
Now, we would
let me bring in Lord West.
Conditions that there would be moved towards disarmament. It would be an absurd position for Scotland not to be.
Lord West, here you are. You were the man in charge of Trident from 2002 to 2006.
Correct.
You've already said that you would resign from Labour if they
stop the Labour.
Absolutely.
Yes.
What do you think the Americans would think of us if we got rid of weapons?
I think the Americans would be shocked. In fact, I know they would be shocked. They made it very clear that this would be an extraordinary thing to do. And as you rightly, we will be the first country to ever have given up nuclear weapons. We have done more than any other country in the world to reduce our weapon stocks, to go down to one system, and it has had absolutely zero impact on stopping new nations getting there and making, for example, Russia and others cut the number of weapons. In fact, the number of states are increasing. And therefore, I think you have far more leverage. We've got now the minimum credible deterrence. You have far more leverage in a multilateral sense if you've got weapons, and then you say, right, let's now everybody say how many warheads they've got, which we do.
But if you were designing a weapon now, you wouldn't be doing Trident. Would not be the weapon you would design for this era, would it? It's a hangover from the Cold War.
You're absolutely right in the sense that and what we know from having, and we've looked at this several times, is that any of the other systems you talked about would end up costing more. There would be real treaty issues, and actually, yes, it's got the Moscow criteria. What we're doing is not getting a new system. We're replacing this. It just happens to be there. Anything else will cost more money.
Now, we know, and we've heard already from Michael Fallon, that Vladimir Putin is on the move and becoming much more aggressive and so forth. How would you defend us if he attacked?
Well, I wouldn't be putting my faith in a nuclear weapons system, which is sending out a signal to all other countries that they should be acquiring nuclear weapons because we have, and therefore, if it's good enough for us, then the message is that all countries should seek to acquire nuclear weapons. And I certainly wouldn't be doing it when there are 135 countries that are currently at the UN trying to negotiate a nuclear ban treaty. So, to answer your question, I would be putting my weight and not blocking, as Britain did, the process at the UN, which is seeking to put in place a nuclear ban treaty. And if we had that treaty, then we can start taking into account those other countries.
But unlike Brendan's position, your position is that you don't want the umbrella of NATO. You're quite happy to fight it out on your own.
I don't want nuclear weapons. And can I just say, people keep using this word deterrent. Let's just challenge that a little bit. Let's just call it weapons of mass destruction.
Yeah.
Lord West just talked about... No, it is not a deterrent.
It is a deterrent.
You cannot prove a deterrent because you cannot prove something. Please, can I just finish this point? This is incredibly important. A deterrent, you would have to be able to prove that by doing something, but rather by not doing something, something else has happened. Exactly. You cannot prove that. Somebody who smokes 100 cigarettes a day and manages to live to an old age cannot then say, you know, that smoking is good for you. That is exactly what Lord West is saying.
I have no doubt whatsoever that America would not have dropped atomic weapons on Japan if Japan had been able to drop atomic weapons. I think we are in the arrogance of people who think they can say in the next 50 years that there won't be a country or a country that might threaten dropping a nuclear weapon. The only thing, may I finish? The only thing you can be sure of is that if you've got the ability of destroying the country that wants to bomb you, it won't drop it. That seems to me...
Let's be absolutely honest about this. Trident is not a defensive weapon. Trident is a political weapon. Trident is there to keep the United Kingdom at the top table of the United Nations. And if you look at Tony Blair... Now, Tony Blair is not someone I quote very often in these matters. Tony Blair, in his memoir, said that they looked at Trident and they said, as a military weapon, it's useless. As cost is astronomical, but they would not.
Gladly,
they wouldn't stop
glad to say I don't agree with everything Tony Blair said.
Please let me finish. Is it a deterrent? Is it really a deterrent?
Well, I think there is no certainty. There is no certainty in any of this. But would we be safer with Russia's proliferation with other countries acquiring the bomb if we were to get rid of it? I think it's very hard to make. And just on Tony Blair,
John, on that point, just on Tony Blair point,
and then I'll come back
on the Tony Blair point, very briefly.
Tony has changed his mind since he wrote those memoirs, and he looks.
Tony Blair said it would be a downgrading of Britain's status as a nation, and that's why
the rise of Russia has made Tony change his mind.
Do you buy the argument, Lord West, that actually why should we be lecturing other countries or trying to stop other countries having nuclear weapons if we have them ourselves? What makes us more sensible and superior?
I think it's not superior because one is where one is. You are where you are, and you say so. Actually, if I were Germany, for example, to try and actually get a sensible nuclear weapon system, it would be a cost way beyond anything you could even imagine.
South Africa got rid of nuclear weapons. Brazil got rid of nuclear weapons.
They were not in the same.
You can do it if the political will is there.
I still say the thing that really makes me say this is in the next 50 years, none of us can predict. None of us can predict. And people who think they can predict are talking nonsense. And I believe that this is an ultimate way of stopping someone dropping a bomb.
A couple of years ago, Chatham House report showed that since 1962, there have been 13 near misses because of human error, because of technological technological error. So first of all, we've got the risk of accidents. Second, we've got underwater drones. If you look at the risk from underwater drones, if you look at the risk from cyber attacks, the idea that these huge Leviathan-type Trident nuclear weapons are going to keep us safe is absolutely
I must
rubbish.
Everything that goes into Trident comes out of our conventional defences. Our conventional defences are being sacrificed on the altar of Trident. And it is unacceptable.
Anyone who says that is deluding them. If they honestly think in Whitehall, I've been involved in it for 30 years, if they think the money from Trident will go into conventional defence, they are deluding themselves.
Absolutely.
The Treasury have made it very clear that wouldn't happen. And in the first 4 years,
it's a political
if you got
choice.
the first 4 years you got rid of it, it will cost extra money for the
on a single one of those 4 submarines, the missiles from that would kill 10 million civilians and cast that area of the planet into a nuclear winter. Are we really thinking that that is the best way in the 21st century to try to...
If it stops
Thank
them
you.
doing
Thank
that
you
to
all
us,
very much.
I like
I'm
to
afraid
do
we
it,
just
I
have to
must
pause
say.
it there. Well,
I've been getting away with it all